Sorry. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulullah wa ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. So today we're starting our new book. We were previously reading out of New Muslim Guide. And this book, The Pillars of Islam and Iman, is kind of similar in that it covers the basics of what everybody needs to know as a Muslim, but it goes into a little bit more depth. Whereas New Muslim Guide was very simple, it just kind of told you what needs to be done and what needs to be understood. In this book, we'll get into some of the reasonings of why. And if everybody doesn't have a book, there's extra books here. So we'll start on page 16. The pillars of Islam. We mentioned this before, right? That Islam is based on 5 pillars. And the reason the parable is given, why is the reason the parable of 5 pillars important? Anybody know? Anybody recall what we discussed before?
It's like a house, if it doesn't have 4 corners and a top holding things up, it'll tumble down.
Right, because if you have a building that's built on pillars, you need all of those pillars to hold up the building. And if one of those pillars is missing, the whole building collapses. So the parable here means that if we don't have these 5 things and adhere to them and work on them, then our whole basis of our religion kind of falls apart. So if we're lacking in one of them, it's important to go and fix that and rectify that. So this parable is based on a narration, the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, where he says that Islam is based on 5 things. Shahadati an la ilaha illallah. The first thing is the shahada, the testimony, la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, right? And this is the same testimony of faith that we say when we enter into Islam. Right? So if anybody entered into Islam recently, this is what you were probably reciting with the Imam. Why is everybody giggling? The testimony of faith, la ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah, right? So there's 2 sentences there. We'll deal with the first statement, la ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah means no one has the right to be worshipped except Allah. And the way this is worded is important as well, and it gives us a better understanding of what's required from us. A lot of times we've come from different faiths in which we believed in somebody to worship or some deity to worship that was other than Allah. For example, a lot of people in the Christian faith believed that Jesus was the Son of God. Right? So they had somebody they were worshiping besides Allah. The way the testimony of faith is set up, there's a negation first. He says, no one's worthy of worship. First, we have to clear our hearts of any attachment of worship to something other than Allah. So whether that's in the example we use Jesus, or whether that's in other traditions someone else, that attachment has to be, the attachment of worship has to be cleaned out first before we can truly worship Allah. Now, of course, we respect Jesus as a prophet. We have love for him and respect for him. But it's not an attachment of worship. So if we're worshiping anything or have that sort of belief or attachment, that has to be cleaned out first. I often use the example of if you have a bowl of milk and you want to put milk in it, and there was something else in there before. Maybe there was some, somebody had eaten Pakistani food in it and there was some gravy or oil left over. So you can't just put the milk in there because it'll spoil the milk. You have to clean it out first. And this is the same thing with our hearts. We have to clean our hearts from any type of wrong or, the improper acts of worship before we can worship Allah. Because Allah doesn't share our worship. It's either all for him or he doesn't want it at all. So this is why the sentence is structured the way it is, where it's a negation, where we declare that we don't worship anything except for Allah. And then after we've negated everything else, we've cleaned our hearts out from any types of worship or anything, then we can worship Allah alone. Any questions on that part? Pretty easy to understand? All right. Alhamdulillah. And that we also believe that Allah, in his infinite mercy, sought to guide us to the straight path. And to guide us, he sent prophets and messengers throughout history. And these are the prophets and messengers that we know in the Quran, and they have also been mentioned in other traditions, such as Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus. And the final prophet is the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And our belief in the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, encompasses all of those other prophets as well. We believe in them as well. But as far as law and instruction go, we use the law and instruction of the Prophet Muhammad because he was the final messenger that was sent by Allah. There's no messenger after him. There's no prophet after him. And whereas the prophets that came before him were sent to a certain nation, right? Like Moses was sent to the children of Israel. And other prophets were sent to different tribes and nations and countries. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was sent to all the world until the end of time. And our belief in him is belief that he was truthful, that he passed along the message accurately, that he was free from sin, and that the only salvation we have that we can attain is by following him. And by following him, we mean what he brought in the Quran and what he explained in the prophetic tradition, the hadith. Because the hadith, the prophetic tradition, is an explanation of the Quran. And we can't complete our deen, can't complete our religion without both sources. So in our declaration of faith, we say, La ilaha illallah, there's no one worthy of worship except Allah. Muhammad Rasulullah, and Muhammad is the Rasul, the messenger of Allah. Yes.
Is there a direct difference between the word prophet and messenger?
Yes.
So is it a such thing that some are messengers, some are prophets, where they don't cross over?
There's a difference between messengers and prophets. There were more prophets than there were messengers. Messengers is like the upgrade from a prophet, to make it this term simple. So a prophet is anybody who received revelation from Allah and was instructed to preach that revelation to someone else. A messenger received a new code of law. So, for example, there were, let's take the example of Moses. He received a new code of law in the Torah. There were prophets after him who affirmed that, reminded people of that, but they still followed the Torah. They didn't have a new code of law. So that's the difference.
So the Nabi would come under the category of
Nabi is a prophet, right? And a Rasul is a messenger. Any other questions on that? We're on, Sister Khalid, we're on page 16 of the new book. Do you have the new book? The new book is right here.
Rather, I have one other question.
Mhm.
It says Noah, and I heard you say Noah was a prophet, but wasn't Adam the first?
Adam was the first prophet, yeah.
Adam was the first prophet.
Right.
Okay.
I was just giving examples.
No. I read it was, and I thought Adam was the first, but I read it, it said no.
No. Noah was the first messenger
Okay.
to receive a code of law. And Allah knows best.
Okay.
We're on page 16, the 5 pillars. All right, so the first pillar, like we said, was the Shahada, the declaration of faith, La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. The second, Iqamatus Salah, to offer and establish, actually, the compulsory prayers. To do that dutifully and to do that as perfectly as possible. So after our Shahada, the first duty that we have is to start learning how to pray. And of course, that's difficult when you're just starting out. But as long as you're trying, and always keep in mind that you made this journey for the sake of Allah alone. And Allah knows your struggles. So if you're trying and you can't memorize it, or you're struggling, or you have to read it off a piece of paper, that's all fine, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your struggle, and that's your personal journey with Him. There's no reason for you to feel frustrated or any type of way about that. So the second thing is establishing the 5 daily prayers, right? And we know the names of them. Let's go over it, right? The morning prayer is from when to, I want you to tell me the name of the prayer and what time it's prayed. Fajr, when is it prayed?
Before the sun comes up. So you mean tonight?
No, I mean in general.
Also,
It starts when?
6.
It starts at dawn, yes. And it ends at sunrise. Sunrise, yeah. Don't say when the sun comes up, because when the sun comes up can be dawn, because that's when it starts coming up. And when it's fully risen is sunrise. So it's between dawn and sunrise. And the easiest way is to like on the apps we have them, which is the one I use. Um, I use this one. I pray. It doesn't have ads, which is good. And you can download it. I pray. It has a little picture of the Kaaba on it, and then it automatically picks up your location and sets the clock according to that. And then it'll it'll give you a little reminder 15 minutes before. You can make all those settings. So that's an easy way to remember the prayer times and to pray them accurately. The next one in the day after Fajr is Zohar. And when is Zohar prayed?
There's a specific way, like how many hours or whatever.
So it's very simply, there's high noon when the sun is at its highest point. So we don't pray when the sun is at its highest point. We wait just a little while, maybe like 10 minutes, you could say. And then you can start the time for Zohar. Right? And then Asr is basically in the afternoon. I can get into the shadows and stuff like that of how it is, but that's not really all that beneficial because nobody uses sundials anymore. Right? Because they would literally have to put like a stick in the ground and measure the shadow to know when the time of prayer came. And we have apps now, so it's much easier, but it's beneficial to know. But that's basically in the afternoon. Asr is in the afternoon. And Asr is one of those prayers. Asr, you should try to pray. With every prayer, you should try to pray at the beginning of the prayer time. The benefit of that is this. If we delay our prayers, number one, in a way, we're not giving it its proper importance. Because what I'm saying is, I'm going to finish watching this TV show. I'm going to finish doing what I'm doing, and then I'll give time to Allah. That's kind of backwards. We should stop everything that we're doing, unless it's something that's, extremely important and can be stopped, right? But in general, we should stop what we're doing and base our schedules around the prayers, not adjust the prayers to our schedules. So we should give the prayer and that meeting with Allah, because prayer is a meeting with Allah. We should give that meeting with Allah its proper importance. The second thing is that if we delay our prayers, we end up getting distracted and we end up rushing them. Because then we remember them right before it's time to finish, when the time finishes, and then we're rushing. So try to pray your prayers in the beginning of the time. And of course, there's a little bit of lenience on the time. There's a time range for it. So, you can use that to your benefit, but always give prayer its proper importance. Asr especially should be prayed closer to the beginning of time, because if you delay it too much, then the sun starts going down, and that's not the proper time to pray Asr. After Asr is Maghrib. When do we pray Maghrib? When the sun sets. Sunset. Right? And the time for Maghrib is very short, actually. It's only about like an hour and 15 minutes. So when the sun sets until it starts then it becomes like dark. And when it becomes dark, it's time for Isha. Right? Which is the last prayer. So the 5 daily prayers. In this book and in the New Muslim Guide, you'll see you'll see how to pray and the methodology for it. Does anybody here not have the New Muslim Guide and need it? You need it? Okay. Abdullah, can you pass me? That's good.
So isn't Asr's always 3 hours after Dhuhr? Because that's
Not necessarily. In the winter, they come quick.
but still 3 hours after Dhuhr,
Not necessarily.
no?
No, it's based on the sun. And if the day is shortened, so then it may be 2.5, it may be 2 hours and 15 minutes. That's all you could. So we can't just make it, a set time, because it's based on the position of the sun. Because the day in winters are short.
Wouldn't it extend itself adjust accordingly?
If the day is short itself, then it's also going to shorten.
Right,
What
so,
times?
but it would adjust.
You don't have any?
Right.
Okay.
Even in the work.
Yeah, just go by the app. It's the easiest way. I don't have that book. I'll get it for you next time, inshallah. I have some at home, I think. Yes, I do. They're in my closet. Okay, any questions about prayer? Isha is when it gets dark. So you could say like it's usually about an hour and 15 minutes or so after Maghrib. So because when the sun sets, you still see the light of the sun. It's still a little bit orange or reddish. And if you go outside right now, it's dark. This is the time for Isha. Almost. It's almost the time for Isha. Any questions on the 5 daily prayers? And we'll get into a lot of the details later on. This is just kind of an overview. This is like an introduction, you could say, right? Okay. The third pillar is what? To pay zakat. Zakat is the obligatory charity. We give charity a lot of times throughout the year. But there's difference between the obligatory charity and then the regular charity that we give, right? The obligatory charity, it's zakat has a specific amount that must be given. Has a specific amount that you must have before it becomes obligatory on you. So, for example, if somebody doesn't have much at all, then it wouldn't be obligatory on that person. It's they can still give it just to get the reward, but it doesn't become obligatory on that person. So it's mentioned here when a Muslim owns what's equivalent to 85 grams of gold or its equivalent in cash. Somebody who's quick on their phone, look up what 85 grams of gold equals in money, in dollars.
$90 a gram.
So 85 times 90. You're going to make me do the math?
750. It might be 92 today, but it's around 90.
All right, just put in eight. What does 85 grams convert to in dollars today? It'll just give us a ballpark.
At $92 a gram, it's $7,820.
Okay, so if you have a savings of $7,800, then you must give zakat on that savings. You must give zakat. And zakat is 2.5% after possessing this quantity for a year. So it's not like you just got money and you have to give it immediately. If you have this amount for a year, then you give zakat. So a lot of people, they put a yearly calendar on it. A lot of people do it in the beginning of Ramadan, that they, according to the Islamic year, which is 10 days shorter than the solar year. So according to the Islamic year, you give zakat once a year. And it's 2.5% on the savings. And that doesn't include like the things that are in use. You have a question?
I was just saying that this is a side note, 85 grams is equivalent to almost 3 ounces, and it's funny how that's the third pillar of Islam, the 3 and the 3. I was just.
I guess.
I apologize.
So it doesn't include like if somebody's living in a house, the value of that house or the things that you're using. So we'll get into all those details when we get into the chapter of zakat. But just know that zakat is obligatory. And if you have that amount of money and you don't know how to give zakat, then ask somebody. Because it is something important. It's something that we must be giving on time and we must be doing correctly. And if we're not doing that correctly, it's just like abandoning prayer. Because we see in the Quran so many times that prayer and zakat are mentioned together for that reason. The fourth pillar that's mentioned here is Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca. Pilgrimage to Mecca is can be performed. It's performed at a specific time during the year. It's obligatory for a person to complete it once in their lifetime, provided that they have the means to do so. The means to do so meaning the physical means and the financial means to do so. And the fifth is to observe Sawm, the fasting of the month of Ramadan. The obligatory fasting is the whole month of Ramadan. You can fast outside of the month of Ramadan. That's perfectly fine. You'll be rewarded for it, but that's not obligatory. The obligatory fast is the month of Ramadan. And we'll get into that as well. Oh, this reminds me. Next week, so they invited me to do a lecture at ICVA on the essentials and introduction to fasting. So I encourage everybody to join that. That'll be our class, because we'll probably be starting fasting next Saturday. So we might as well discuss it next Friday and all the details of it. So come prepared with your questions if you have any, or you can always ask them in the chat, the group chat. But that'll be our class next week. It'll be at ICVA, and I'll post the exact times for it. I think it starts at 5:30. I don't know when my lecture starts, to be honest.
So are we going over any Ramadan stuff for today's class?
We can.
And I thought that's what the agenda was, because that's what was announced online.
We can, because I'm done here after this page.
Well, I have a question about what you just said.
Yeah.
So, the pillars of Islam, right? Isn't Psalm before Hajj?
It doesn't
It
matter.
doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter.
Whatever, as long as you can be 30.
Som and fast a lot of times are flipped around.
Yeah.
Som and Hajj are sometimes flipped around. Usually it's fasting first, then Hajj. Sometimes in some books they'll have it, but it's all the same. Any other questions on that? Was that easy to understand? Okay. Okay. Sister Khadija had an agenda item.
Well, a lot of our reverts were asking about Ramadan, and they were nervous about Ramadan, so we said that we would do this class and next class on Ramadan.
Okay. Do we have specific questions? We'll start with questions first. Anybody have questions about Ramadan? For who will this be the first Ramadan? MashaAllah, 3 sisters. Okay. All right, so we'll kind of go through this in depth. So Ramadan is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. It will start next Saturday, I believe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Shahr Ramadan unzila fihi al-Quran. The month of Ramadan is when the Quran was first revealed. The first revelation that came upon the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was in the month of Ramadan. And because of the importance of the Quran, Ramadan is a month-long celebration of the Quran. It's a month-long celebration of the mercy of Allah that He gave us this religion and gave us this book to guide us. To celebrate that, we have a number of acts of worship that we perform. So first and foremost is fasting. Fasting, Sawm, is done every day from dawn, not from sunrise, from dawn until sunset. So usually we'll wake up a little bit before dawn, have something to eat, light usually, and include dates in it. And we'll have something to eat. And then for the rest of the day, we cannot eat or drink. And yes, no water. And all the way up until Maghrib. And when the sun sets, then we can break our fast, eat, drink, whatever. Yes,
So what's up early in the morning?
I couldn't hear what you said, sister.
What's up early in the morning?
So if you were to fast today, let's say, and this is why I recommend you have like the apps, dawn is at 5:40. So you would eat whatever you need to eat before 5:40. And when it's 5:40, when the azan goes off on your app, you stop. You can't eat after that. And then your Maghrib, the sun would set at 5:57 p.m. So we have like a 12-hour fast, which isn't that bad. We've done more. All right. So yes.
So the Savonia, can, can you go say that again? So she can hear that again.
What was the question about the suhoor?
Yeah, just hear.
So the suhoor, the pre-dawn meal, you'll eat before 5. If according to today, and the time is going to change every day. Just so you know, you would eat before 5:40. Eat whatever you need to eat. I don't recommend that you eat too heavily because it'll mess with you. But you'll find your happy place once you start. Get plenty of water, and you'll stop before 5:40. When it's 5:40, you can't eat after that.
When you have this support meal, is it important to make an intention or anything, or?
No, it's not because you've already the intention is the action of the heart. You don't have to say any types of words of intention or anything like that because the fact that you woke up for suhoor, the fact that you know that I'm going to fast tomorrow is your intention.
So when Ramadan first comes, are you saying to make the intention the beginning of Ramadan?
It's in your heart. I don't understand what making intention means. I mean, you know you're going to fast tomorrow, so that's your intention. Intention is an action of the heart. It's not a. The only time intention is said out loud is when you're making Hajj. Other than that, there's no reason to say intention out loud. It's an action of the heart. So during fasting, during the times of fasting, we cannot eat, we cannot drink, and not engage in sexual activity. Those things negate the fast. Negating the fast or breaking the fast is not something we want to do because it's not only a major sin, but also we lose out on the big rewards of fasting. Some of the rewards of fasting that I remember off the top of my head, one of them is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives like a amount of reward for every action. But for fasting, He said, fasting is for me and I will reward it. Meaning He'll reward it as He wishes to reward it. The reward for fasting is very big. And we should seek to do so in the most perfect way possible. Fasting in a perfect way not only means refraining from food and drink, but also refraining from any type of behavior, actions, which are not permissible. So, for example, if I'm hungry throughout the day, I become grumpy. I shouldn't be yelling at people. I shouldn't be fighting or cursing or doing these types of things. In my business activity, I shouldn't be lying. I shouldn't be backbiting. I shouldn't be in my actions. I shouldn't be doing things that are not permissible, hitting people or stealing or any types of these activities which are not permissible in the first place. They're even worse while we're fasting because not only do we get the sin for it, now we're ruining our fast. Right? We're losing out on that big reward. Now we're just staying hungry and thirsty for no reason. And we don't want to waste it like that. So it is a test of our patience because if we haven't eaten and drinking all day, yeah, some people become grumpy. And, the people at the masjid aren't always going to be nice because people are tired and grumpy, haven't had their coffee. I don't miss my coffee. But yeah, that's the hardest part. Seriously. I can go without water, I can go without food, I can't go without coffee. That's the hardest part.
The crazy thing is that costs hydrates.
Yeah.
It's like
That's why you'll see me at
the worst thing to drink.
you'll see me at iftar. I'll have a date and I'll have a big 24-ounce from Wawa's
Of what?
of coffee.
Ay, ay, really?
I was known for that. You just see me. I have a date and my coffee.
Dehydrate you so badly.
I don't care. I'll die, but I need my coffee. All right. So now, who is exempted from fasting? Fasting is obligatory on everyone who has reached the age of maturity. People who are exempted from fasting are those who are sick, whether that sickness be a temporary sickness that stops them from fasting or something that's permanent, right? For example, old age. Somebody's diabetic, somebody has kidney failure, and are in a condition where it is harmful for them to fast, and they don't need to fast. Um, for the person who has a chronic type of issue in which they cannot fast, then they give fidya, which means they feed a poor person for every day of fasting that they miss, which is 30 days. And that amount of fidya is estimated about $15 a day. And if you want to get, if anybody is in that situation, contact Sister Khadija. She can take your donation. But that amount goes to feed a poor person, and that's your exemption for fasting. Now, there are certain temporary things which will stop some of your fasting. Somebody has the flu, right? Similarly, a woman who's on her period, those days she doesn't she doesn't pray, but she also doesn't fast. Now, when you temporarily miss your fast, whether it's through because of the period or because of some illness, then you can make that fast up later on throughout the year. You don't have to give, you don't give fidya for that. You don't give the, what it is to feed the poor person for that, because you can make those 3, 5, 7 days up later on. Okay, what else? So, recommended activities during fasting or during the month of Ramadan is to read as much Quran as possible. Whether you can read that in Arabic, whether you can read it in English, the translation, whether you want to listen to it, it's all good. It all will help you because this is the month of the Quran, so we should listen to it or read it as much as possible, study it as much as possible. A lot of times, in the masjids, in the mosques, you'll see people coming together and having iftar together. This is a nice activity to be part of, so you don't have to be breaking fast alone. It gives you a sense of community and a little bit of a joyous occasion. Share different types of food and things like that. One of the virtues of breaking fast together is if you feed another person to break their fast, it's as if you get the same reward as that fasting person. So if you are able to and can feed other people to break their fast, do that. That's why charity is a big part of Ramadan as well. So there's that. After breaking the fast, after the prayer of Isha, there's a special prayer in Ramadan called Taraweeh, in which it's not obligatory, but it's good to partake in it. You'll be rewarded if you partake in it. And then they read from the Quran every day. And a lot of masajids will read 1/30th of the Quran and try to finish the Quran within the month of Ramadan. So it is a little bit long. It takes about an hour, 15 hour and a half. Yeah. But again, you can pray part of it. You can pray all of it. That's up to you.
Bring water. It's like aerobics.
from the doctors that you get.
But yeah, it's not something, Ramadan is not something to be scared of. It's enjoyable once you start getting over it. You know, the first couple of days are always a little bit tiresome, and you'll feel it. But once you get the hang of it, it's very enjoyable. It's very spiritual to be connected to Allah. One of the spiritual aspects of Ramadan that we should keep in mind is when we're fasting, there's many opportunities throughout the day where we're alone and we could sneak a quick meal in, quick bite to eat, but we don't do that. And we don't do that. Why? Because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us. And if we're fasting for Him, and we're not fasting for the people, we're fasting for Him. So the same way Allah is watching us while we're fasting in Ramadan, the same way He's watching us throughout the year if we're doing any type of sins. So this is the month-long training of that consciousness of Allah, that He's watching us at all times, and that we should abandon any types of sins or any type of wrong actions that we're doing throughout the year. Are there any questions? Did I cover everything?
The juices of the Quran, if you don't go to Tawi prayer at home.
You can pray at home. You can read out of the Quran. It's not mandatory to do so. It's all up to you.
That's all. That's all.
No, it's not mandatory to do so. It's all up to you, as much as you can do. Questions? If 3 people have never experienced Ramadan, you must have some questions. Go ahead. There's no such thing as a stupid question. The worst question is the one you don't ask. Don't ask her question. Ask your question.
No, I was saying everything you said, that's true. That's true.
So much information. Is anyone online?
One person online. I wonder who it is. Who are you?
Oh, what's the, so you break the fast with water and then you eat three
3 dates.
3 days.
That's the it's not mandatory to do so, by the way. That's the sunnah, that's the way of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and that's the way usually we do it. We eat the dates first and then water. But if you don't have dates or water, you can, use whatever.
You can tell her about like when you go to break it, and then you can ask Allah for something.
Oh yes. So during your fast, like near the end especially, is a good time to supplicate, to ask from Allah at the end of your fast, whatever your heart desires, whatever guidance you want, whatever you need help with. And the one thing that I was reading that I think I may have even posted this one. It said, ask Allah even if you need a shoestring. Even if you need laces for your shoe, ask Allah for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't get tired of us asking from Him. A lot of times we'll ask Allah when it's something big, yes. But even if it's something small that you need, ask Allah. Ask Allah. So at the end of your fast, if there's something troubling you, if there's something you need, it's something you want, ask Allah. It's one of the best times. It's one of the times that is said that prayers, supplications are accepted. So it's a good time to ask Allah.
Is the sunnah one thing, or is it, can you ask for 5 things? Can you
What?
ask for, like, say if you would sit down now, right, and write a list out of all the things you need, you want, or just struggling on you, things like this, right? And you come up with a list of like 50 things.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask all of them. Ask whatever you want. There's no problem in asking one thing or 2 things, 10 things. You can keep asking from Allah. You ask over and over again. Yes.
Another suggestion is that when you break your fast with the dates, so you're gonna break your fast quickly, and then go ahead and pray in the crib, and then have your dinner. Some people get Especially if you go to parties with a lot of people around, there's so much food for the iftar for breaking the fast, that they hang out there and they talk and they eat, they talk and they eat, and then the rib prayer is delayed. What you want to do is break your fast first with your drinking water, go pray your rib prayer, and then hang out.
So yes, so right at sunset is the time to break fast. So we break our fast first and then we pray. So usually you break your fast like within a couple minutes with dates, water, maybe some fruit, or whatever light type of thing, and then you go pray. And after prayer, you can take your time and eat, if you want to eat more or whatever, and do that in a relaxed way. But usually you'll try to eat something light and then pray.
I just want to say, and the reason because of that, the reason that is because if you try to overextend yourself, when you go to pray, you will feel it. And it will be so uncomfortable when you're praying because you've eaten too much too quickly. And it will be the last time.
So usually people assume that when we break our fast, we eat a lot. It doesn't happen. You usually just eat a normal amount because your stomach shrinks a little bit too. So, but it is important to eat that pre-dawn meal. Even if you don't feel like it, just eating something light, like a few dates, some yogurt, some water, this is important. Our Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, told us that there's blessings in that pre-dawn meal. So even if you're not hungry, try to eat something. Water, yes.
So I heard this along the way, and I just want you to kind of just speak to it. That when we eat, no matter what time we eat, if it's the Sohor meal or if it's in the breaking of the fast, that you're not to eat too much. You're supposed to keep the fast in mind the whole entire time, so that you're not like, yeah, that. But also that you're really still during the fast. So it's not like you could eat more, but you want to keep it down because you're trying to stay in the spirit of the fast. I don't know.
You can eat as much as you want.
But I know that that's what I was told along the way. And it
Nah.
took me years to really embrace that.
You don't have to really reduce
So
the.
now
You eat as much as you want,
I-
but you're not gonna end up. Believe me, you're not gonna end up eating that much because it'll be troublesome for you later on. But you eat. Don't try to reduce the amount. Don't try to starve yourself. That's not the point. You eat what you need to eat. Get your calories in. Make sure you're staying healthy. Um, but yeah.
And you can tell them about how long you can eat at 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 5 in the morning.
You can eat any time of the night, but it is important. The sahur is like really right before the time for fajr. So try to wake up half an hour earlier than dawn. Eat something, then pray, and then go about whatever you need to do. If you need to go back to sleep, you need to get ready for your day, whatever.
Around what time do people if I'm gonna set my clock for Ramadan, like a good time to wake up so that I can at least have.
Well, it depends on what you want to make for yourself for breakfast.
Yeah.
If you're going to start cooking, you might give yourself an extra time.
I usually do 2 hours, like if I'm cooking and then an hour.
2 hours?
Yeah, because I have to get up, I have to cook, but then I also need time to eat it. Like I can't just put it all in at once because I'm eating and drinking a whole bottle of probably Zamzam, and I cannot eat and drink at the same time. So
I would think for me it's 45 minutes, but that's just me. For me it's 45 minutes. But again, it's up to you. It's up to you.
Because I know the time changes a little bit each day.
Yeah.
but It helps to because then I get overwhelmed thinking, oh, I have to set.
No, so the good thing about this app, the iPray app, is you can set it to be like, okay, give me an alarm like 45 minutes before dawn. It's in the settings. You just have to go in. Yeah, it's called iPray. It doesn't have ads. That's why I like it. Yeah, so you go to alert settings and you can kind of play around with that.
Is the color of it, is it blue?
Is it down around here?
It is a black gaba on it.
is
It is free and it has no ads.
Hold on, you said I pray?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
I don't have it on me.
I don't know. I have Android, so I have it. I don't know about you Apple people.
We have I.
I don't know about Apple people.
Those are the best people, you know that.
Whatever.
So the Muslim Pro cost me have on ads.
Muslim Pro has way too many ads, and it spies on you.
Every time you go in there. All right, so question, so basically like, okay, so like, you pray, so as soon as you see the sun going down, you already have Israel, like, right? Sometimes it's supposed to be daytime on it.
Well, I'll repeat that, please.
Sometimes like around like 5:30, it's still sunny in front of my house. So
Okay.
That's my 5:30 prayer. And then you saying I would,
Go by whatever the time is on the app. So right now, today Maghrib was at 5:45. Or was it 5:45? I'm sorry. It was 5:58, right? So just go by that. Then you don't have to worry about whether it's sunny or not. Okay, don't worry about it. Because you're still going to see a little bit of the remnants of the sun out there. You're still going to see a little bit of redness because it just set. You don't have to wait for it to be dark. When the sun sets, according to the app, you go and break your fast. You don't have to wait after that.
What's the icon for the app?
It's a Kaaba.
Green background?
Mine didn't have a background at all. I shared it in the chat. But there's other Azan apps too, so
She needs to be put in the chat, she said.
just give her number to Sister Khadija. All right, so any other questions? Any other questions?
Professor, one point you might want to explain.
Yes.
Inshallah. This is still about Ramadan. What if you have to travel during the month of Ramadan?
Traveling. Okay, so somebody has to travel, and they can miss fasting during that travel. Traveling meaning you're going a distance in which your travel would make your fast difficult. So, for example, if you're flying across time zones and now things are getting really, really long, you can skip fasting that day and make it up afterwards. Marizan or Safarin.
Can you tell them what happens if you don't make it up? For people who are like doing working jobs, because I'm gonna be going back to work soon, is it hard with like brain function? Because I know sometimes I'm a nurse and like when if there anyone who's in like medicine or whatever where it's going really fast paced, so I'm used to like constantly snapping. But I know there are like ways to help with that. But if it's like a struggle being like while you're working.
Honestly, if you're doing it for the sake of Allah, He's the one who gives you strength. If we start thinking about fasting, like if I fast just as a health type of thing, it's way harder than fasting as an act of worship. So it may take you a little time to adjust to it, and there may be some days where you feel kind of down, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help you in ways that you couldn't imagine. I remember, and this is about 10 years ago, there was a heat wave in Pakistan. I was in Pakistan at the time. There was a heat wave which was so ridiculously hot that people were dropping dead on the street. It was bad. It was like at 130 degrees. It was bad. And it was continuously that hot. And like, so it's cities. So the concrete walls were getting hot. Like you feel the heat in the wall at night. It was horrible. But people were still fasting. And it was a long day too, because it was in the summer. People were still fasting. So whoever really wants to do that for the sake of Allah, Allah will allow them to do that. Like I said, it's not going to be easy. Nobody said it could be completely easy, but you'll get there, inshallah.
What about the idea of practicing 2 days before Ramadan. Just to kind of see how you react.
You're a little bit late for that probably, but yeah, you could fast a day or two, I guess.
The white nights, you missed the white nights.
Yeah. So we're a little bit late on that one. I should have reminded you about a month ago.
Can you
But khair, inshallah.
go over like you know how you said that we're supposed to make it up. Say if you get your man says, okay, you gotta make it up. But if you don't make it up, this is what happens.
Well, if you don't make it up, then you haven't completed the third pillar, the pillar of fasting. If you don't make it up, and you lose out on the reward, you've committed a sin by not, establishing the third pillar of Islam, and it's a major sin because these are the pillars of Islam. So anything you compromise out of that, it's affecting your whole religion.
Okay, so you said like, say for instance, I'm about to go to Ohio and be traveling for 8 hours. So I wouldn't fast that day, but I would make it up at the end?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can skip fasting that day, and then you can make it up after Ramadan, any time after Ramadan. So a lot of people will wait until winter when the days are short and do it then, and that's fine, as long as you do it before the next Ramadan. Yes, she has all the strategies.
Just to let you know, the iPray app for iPhone is $1.99.
Oh.
Free for-
It's free for us though. There you go. That's why you should have a Samsung Z Flip 6 like I do. Samsung plug. Pay me,
You know, we should get you to do it from that.
right? All right. If that's all, who else is online? Now we have 2 people. Who are you? Any questions online?
What's our homework?
Your homework is to memorize page 16. Memorize the 5 pillars of Islam. You don't have to necessarily memorize the Arabic, but I want you to memorize the 5 pillars, what they are, and give a brief explanation of each. Got it? All right. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Sister Annette had something that she wanted to share with us.